too many brothers is afraid to stand up. So we need strong brothers that's going to stand up and teach our people what they need to know as far as the conscious era. You know what I mean? I'm a Hebrew Israelite. We deal with a little different, but at the end of the day, it's brothers. I could relate to any brother that's trying to bring and help his people back, man. So we got to work with each other. We got to remember that the fight is against the enemy, the so-called devil, white man. That's the enemy, the main enemy. So we got to work with our people and come together and put our differences aside somewhat to bring our people back, man. But we got to be willing to sit down and talk constructively and iron out our differences, because we got a major enemy that want to take us out. Been trying to take us out for the last 500 years. So that's what I want to say. I just ran into the brother, and you know, hopefully in the future we can chop it up, brother. All right.
Peace, family. My name is Brother Reggie Mabry. If you have never heard me before or have never seen me, I want to say Hotep, Assalamu Alaikum, Islam, Shalom, and Amen. This is a special presentation made for BABATV to address the ongoing controversy around the Nation of Islam and their use of a technology from Scientology. And so this, right off the gate, this is a support video supporting the Nation of Islam's usage of a technology that can better our people. The name of this presentation is Kemet Science and Scientology: the false attack on the Nation of Islam and the wisdom of the Honorable Louis Farrakhan. Those attacking the Nation of Islam either know or do not know or do not care about the history of the black man. Ptah Hotep, ancient Kemet sage. Do not be proud and arrogant with your knowledge. Consult and converse with the ignorant and the wise, for the limits of art are not reached. No artist ever possesses that perfection to which he should aspire. Good speech is more hidden than green stone, emeralds, yet it may be found among maids at the grindstone. Those are points to think about, because the more you know you don't know. At the same time, you think that you know. The ordinary people have knowledge and are evaluating the knowledge as it comes to fruition, as it comes to a complete circle. So though you may think that you have some points, if you made some points, there will always be some circular or some continuation of knowledge, and in that you may be proven wrong. So be not arrogant because of your knowledge. Now, as I begin this talk, I want to let the audience know that I'm not a member of the Nation of Islam, though I consider the Nation of Islam my brothers. My teaching on the subject come from Dr. Yosef Ben Jochanan, Dr. Leonard Jeffries, Dr. John Henry Clark, Professor Edward Scobie, Brother James Small, my affiliation with the sages of ASCAC, and my own research. At the same time, I am not a member of any Masonic lodge or any of those orders, yet I am a member of an African brothership. Through Brother James Small, I have been affiliated with the legacy of El Hajj Miguel Shabazz and have served the legacy for over 30 years. Professor James Small was the first Imam of Muslim Mosque Incorporated and a very important member of the Organization of Afro-American Unity. I have also known Sister Ella Collins, and I've taken instructions from her. Also Rodnell Collins, her son. I have also known and talked with Sister Betty Shabazz, and I have been on call during several important events. These events include the many celebrations at Child's Memorial Baptist Church after the annual pilgrimage, the same church where Malcolm was eulogized. I attended the great meeting at the Apollo between the families of Minister Malcolm X and Minister Louis Farrakhan. I received every call on every event, including the fire that led to the death of Sister Betty Shabazz and the later death of young Malcolm. I also knew and had a relationship with Minister Khalid Muhammad when he was in Mosque number 7. I also knew of the great meeting at City College that marked a turning point in the leadership of the Nation of Islam that was earlier. I attended Madison Square Garden when Minister Louis Farrakhan spoke. I attended this milestone with Dr. Leonard Jeffries and Professor James Small. I attended the first and several of the Million Man Marches. Under the direction of Brother Small, served as an escort when Minister Khalid Muhammad visited Malcolm's grave. I was also in charge with Brother Tariq of the New Black Panther Party and the Sons of Africa of receiving Minister Khalid Muhammad's body and escorting it, his KRS, which is the Medu Neter term for risen body, to his Pert Imheru, which is his funeral or his homecoming. I attended the lecture at Harriet Tubman during the controversy of Zach Kondo and his book on the assassination of Malcolm X as an observer, and the rebuke by the then Minister Conrad Muhammad. Later, I've also had a good relationship with the now Minister Conrad Tiller. The Nation of Islam, in return for all of our patience and our patience with them, served us as we funeralized Dr. John Henry Clark and Dr. Yosef Ben Jochanan, where the Minister Louis Farrakhan sent his best and his fruit to work with me as I was the lead in, let's say, managing an orderly house. I've also met Minister Louis Farrakhan when he attended Gil Noble's funeral, and I was an escort for Dr. Yosef Ben Jochanan. What I'm saying in large, I am well aware of the bittersweet journey our people have taken, and I have watched the patience on many sides of trying to understand when people think that there is no understanding. But yet, I feel that in this journey it's important to be brothers and sisters and to have patience with our people. I know this is an important subject, and I will not be speaking on this subject if I had nothing to add, nothing to help, or nothing to say. The reality is that the death of the man we knew and know as Malcolm X may have been prevented by the very tools the Nation of Islam is bringing forth, a technology that even the author of what is called Dianetics says is not his. During this terrible time of the 1960s, there was a climate that clouded our people's judgment. Families were broken up. Our people's largest organization since the government movement was in peril. People took unnecessary sides. It got so messy in New York that Bumpy Johnson had to mediate. For our people, there will be worse times, and we must do a better job. So we have to ask ourselves, do we need to examine tools that may seem that do not come from us, but actually come from us? Do we need to examine tools and see if they could help? The tools of technology called auditing that's in controversy was created first on the continent of Africa to run a civilization that lasted over 3,000 years. Excuse my error. Others can claim it, but the written records point to the Nile Valley. Anything else is speculation because the written records are not there, but they are in the Nile Valley. Now, I watched the debate between the good brothers, Rizza Islam and Ishmael Bey and others, and thought it was time for me to intervene on righteousness, truth, and scholarship. I've also heard the videos of the generals Sarah Seti and young Pharaoh Allah. I know most of these parties. I've heard their points and gathered some materials to help our people discern. On General Sarah Seti and young Pharaoh Allah, I've learned to be patient with them and listen. They have a particular kind of conversation that young people listen to me. For me, the process of listening and not reacting or being emotional has made me a better teacher. What separates me from them in this regard is that they have no primary research, just regurgitated material, mainly from Europeans or otherwise not cited. This does not mean that they are incorrect at points, but there is often a deeper understanding that that they can only show by showing those primary sources to show what they know or what they do not know. I've heard all the points against the technology, and I will add my points. If we are to overcome the mental state that our people are in the hells of North America, we must be clear. The ancient name for this mental state is Mat-Karu, true of voice. It is our reactive mind that allowed the kidnapping and enslavement of our peoples and the continued subjugation in the diaspora. I dare anyone to dispute this fact. The people on the continent mental state was in disarray when the Libyans, Persians, Greeks, Romans, Arabs came to our lands, both in what is called Asia and Africa. The continuous onslaught of Indo-European invaders who themselves benefited from the teachings of the first people, creating a mental deficiency and survival culture and a breakdown of higher thinking. The reactive mind was a virus that has infected us to this very day, and the only tool that we have to overcome this, if we can, is a tool that the Nation of Islam has introduced, not in the sense that auditing itself is the only tool, but we need to look at technologies. And so what I'm talking about here is the fact that an established organization with already precepts of religion, a belief, a love for black people, a love for God could say that we could still grow. This is what I'm talking about when I mean that the Nation of Islam is introducing a process in which we could build ourselves up, even though when we think that we're already built up. You have to see the wisdom in that, the bravery in that, the courage in that. Again, this tool is not Scientology or dynamics, but a technology pulled from the authors of the original authors that will allow our people to be clear from the reactive mind or Mat-Karu in ancient Kemet. The authors say the technology is ancient. I'm going to show this. For the purpose should only be for us to master ourselves so that we can be good stewards and shepherds of our people. I know people on both sides and other sides of the aisle that call themselves Muslims, call themselves Kemet, call themselves Hebrews, call themselves Masons, call themselves Christians, but are ignorant of the systems of the past. As many as you know, I'm harsh on those who claim to be Kemet because they are either ignorant, they know where to look for the solutions but often keep it to themselves, or do not use it to solve our people's problems. I think that if you have knowledge, then you should find a way in which to use this knowledge as a tool instead of keeping it for yourself. So, as a young but trusted student of Dr. Yosef Ben Jochanan and others, I will reveal some knowledge to hopefully end the attack on the Nation of Islam and help our people move forward. In these pictures, in these various pictures, you will see Dr. Yosef Ben Jochanan. On the top left, Dr. Yosef Ben Jochanan is in a Shriner's cap with Dr. George Simmons and another brother I do not know. Dr. Yosef Ben Jochanan also has his Kemet regalia on at the same time. On the next slide to the right, we see Rabbi Levi Almajan, Dr. Ben, the Honorable Percy Sutton, at the Beth Shalom Ethiopian Hebrew Congregation in 1977. For citation purposes, this picture belongs to the Black Jews. So here is Dr. Yosef Ben Jochanan with Hebrew scholars. On the bottom left, you see Dr. John Henry Clark, Dr. Joseph Ben Jochanan, and Dr. Chancellor Williams, 3 great men. On the bottom right, you see Dr. Joseph Ben Jochanan's Freemasonry of the Ancient Egyptians, his book. Dr. Joseph Ben Jochanan came from many schools of thought. He was born in African Hebrew. Jochanan is not his born name. He was born Johannes. Jochanan is his Hebrew mystery school name, if you don't know. He was a Shriner. He was a professor, and he was high priest, plumb, level, squared, 360 degrees. Order of the mysteries. The Nation of Islam probably may not even have used the tools of Scientology if they were able to obtain Dr. Ben's library. People do not know. They were interested in Dr. Ben's work, his information, his library. And before using the tools of Scientology, they sought to unpack his over 10,000 volumes of books and personal papers in their correct search from this Grand Master. His collection housed hundreds of books on masonry and authors who were of various crafts, also held thousands of pages of crafted constitutions. It was known a fact that Dr. Joseph Ben Jochanan did promise the Nation of Islam his library. Excuse the error. There's a public record of this. However, the library still remains in the custodianship of his family. However, even with this library, without proper keys to books and personal papers, would not have been of complete value, but it would have been an important step for the Nation of Islam if they chose to unpack Dr. Joseph Ben Jochanan's work. To truly understand what Dr. Ben would teach, you would probably have to be a member of his craft. And I'm not talking about the Masonic order. I'm talking about the order of the mysteries and his connection to ancient Egypt, and or have it been taught to you by a disciplined adherent of his to reveal, but very few of those have surfaced or who want to, how can I say, invade. They may be here, they are here, but very few of them really kind of uncloak themselves. But many of his students and fellow craft students are here, and they do help. They just do not say where they come from. However, Dr. Joseph Ben Jochanan left clues in his many works and teachings, from one to understand the philosophy of the system. Few can call themselves a senior student of Dr. Joseph Ben Jochanan. I cannot, but I've had a few minor lessons, hints, and personal conversations that will help this through. Enough to, I believe, to end the attack of the Nation of Islam and in the regard of a system that they have chosen. At the same time, among those at his side during Dr. Joseph Ben Jochanan's last breaths, and as he entered the ground, was student minister Hafiz Muhammad, sent by the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, and during his last breaths and his last moments was also Dr. Leonard Jeffries, Professor James Small, and myself. But the Nation of Islam sent Minister Hafiz Muhammad of Mosque number 7 to be at our side for unity and for love. And so many of these people who rail things at our great institutions do not know the interworkings of the institutions. Only we know it because we're there and we see the brothership and the love, though there are some things that we do not understand. There are some differences that can't be completely healed, right? But there is a love for our future that binds us to overlook that and to work for the better good of our people. So any of you who tried to use Al-Hajj Malik el-Shabazz as a weapon against the Nation of Islam. If you were not there, if you're not part of the legacy on either side, you have nothing to say of value, nothing legitimate to say of value, especially when the people that were there or people who actually are part of the legacy have chosen for the better good of our people to understand that it was our reactive mind that left not only Al-Hajj Malik el-Shabazz in harm's way, but Martin Luther King and Garvey and many of our other greats, is because of our reactive mind, our jealousy, our envy, our lack of the better of the future, left many of our people in harm's way. And so what must we do to cure this? What must we do? I also want to say about the Nation of Islam that, as a matter of fact, at some point Dr. Bennett told his family that he had wanted to be cremated, maybe because of old age or just a conversation, but nevertheless that was a big possibility. But it was the student minister, Mosque number 7, Hafiz Muhammad, who stood up and gave the wisest counsel to the family as to why Dr. Yosef Ben Jochanan should be buried in the ground. And the family then decided after a long conference, what they would do. And so we are happy about this. So I'm just trying to tell people that there are other things that go on behind the scenes that you just don't know about. Now, what I know and what I believe, and the reason why I'm talking is that because they sought to get Dr. Yosef Ben Jochanan's works and talk with us, they were in a time period of thoroughly investigating several practices to decide on a living system that they can incorporate to make their flock of our people Makaru, clear, or better Muslims in Islam. One can have all the materials in front of them, but you know, it's the difference between having a step-by-step system that they can evaluate. So this is a system that they seem to be evaluating. If it's not used, they will discard it. There were other systems they could have pulled from Freemasonry, the Knights Templar, Rites of Mizraim, the Rosicrucians, but those systems, though they seek to do some of the similar things, they come out of a philosophy that is different than the philosophy and teachings of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad. Now, I'm not privy to any discussions or any of the conversations or any of the thinking of the Nation of Islam, but in the end, they made a wise decision. Now, the question would be, why not use the tools of Kemet directly? Some of you will say who think you know Kemet. Well, first, there will have to be a model of success with a current group of people and teachers. Second, there will have to be free to take without any oaths. Lastly, they could still benefit from the help of those who know about or who are within the systems if they want to help. For example, myself. I am simply going to show some material that will help. I choose to speak on this because I know a few things to in fact help and to answer a question, where does this come from? Now, my teachers would not allow me to enter into any system where I would have to take an oath that I could not serve my people, meaning that I would have to take an oath to keep things clear. That was the decision of Professor Small and Dr. Leonard Jeffries and Professor Scobie and others, because they felt that there may be a time where there are some things that you should be able to say but not be beholden to an oath, right? So going to talk. So now, at the same time, at no point am I recommending Scientology or even the tools that they use or the Nation of Islam uses. I'm not recommending it. I'm just saying that those tools could benefit. It is up to the Nation of Islam, because they are the ones who are using this tool, and ultimately they will make a decision as to the usefulness of this tool. If you want to use the tool, then if you're interested in using the tool, then join the Nation of Islam, because I think that they would be proper stewards of whether or not you should, how long the tool should be in use. But don't go and use the tool on your own, right? I am only saying that, what I am also saying is that the tool has an ancient root in the place of the origin of humanity. I'm saying that the tools can be altered, and the current tool that the Nation of Islam is using, if it doesn't fit their need, they can alter it or discard it. However, for the probably more than 40,000 members of the Nation of Islam, they have taken a step to deal with the weakened consciousness of the black woman and black man, the weakened faith in ourselves, the weakened faith in our God, the weakened faith in ourselves and our families, to use a system that they feel can help. That's just my thinking. Some of you are watching are Masons or members of secrets or societies of secrets, religions, members of government, members of scientific or academic community, members of corporate community, members of communities of black people who believe in self-determination. But most of you are just members of the black community at large. In many of these systems that you seek education, advice, permission, counsel, judgment, don't you? However, the fact of the matter is that we as a group of people have no indigenous system, or even if we're using a system, we don't know that it's indigenous, and many of you actually do not have a system at all. So let's get into the program. Scientology, this state of clear. Forget all the attacks on why the Nation of Islam is using Scientology, right? I know you see the name Ron Hubbard, and you see their signs and symbols with the pyramids and the S, and I know this is frightening to you. But the Nation of Islam seems to be interested in the state of clear. What is clear? The state of clear. Clear is the name of a state achieved through auditing and described a being with no longer has his own reactive mind, the hidden source of irrational behavior, unreasonable fears, upsets, and insecurities. Without a reactive mind, individuals regain their basic personality, self-determinism, and in essence become much, much more himself. The full glorious state of clear has no comparable descriptions in any writings existing in our culture. It is a goal man has dreamed of achieving for more than 2,500 years. That's an important date right there, 2,500 years. Yet the state of clear is far from anything anyone has conceived of previously. Indeed, that one could become something far higher and better than a human being personally and in a single lifetime is a brand new concept. The state of clear does not exist today and is attainable by all. Thousands upon thousands of Scientologists all over the world are clear, and more achieve this state with every passing day. So, in summary, clear is a state of a state where the person has control over the reactive mind. And we know of the reactional behavior, unreasonable fears, upsets, and securities. We know that these things are causing death and destruction in our communities, and at the same time preventing us from dealing with our oppression, right? The oppressor wants to keep us in a state of reactive mind so that we continue killing ourselves and doing his service for him better than he could do it to ourselves. We're doing it more to ourselves than he could ever do it. Isn't a state to relieve us of this burden important? Now, others might say, yeah, but there's other ways to achieve it. This is the time, and this is why I'm making this video. If this technology right here does not work, then reveal your technology. I am going to show you at least the origins of it. Attributes of being clear. Clear is a state that has never been attainable in man's history. A clear possesses attributes that are fundamentally inherent but not always available in an unclear state, which has not been suspected of man and not included in past discussions of its abilities and behavior. The clear is free from active or potential psychosomatic illnesses or aberrations, self-determined, vigorous and persistent, unrepressed, able to perceive, recall, imagine, create, and compute at a high level above the norm, stable mentality, free from emotion, able to enjoy life, freer from accidents, healthier, able to reason swiftly, able to react quickly. Interesting, these are attributes of clear, or certainly attributes that one can have if they were really free from poverty, free from hunger, free from illness, free from oppression, free from the 9 to 5 just to make rent, right? The European, the oppressor, he has many of the attributes of clear because he knows that he controls the system. We don't control the system, but we don't have a mentality yet to control the system. What is auditing? Although purely philosophical aspects of L. Ron Hubbard's work are sufficient in themselves to alleviate this civilization, only auditing provides a precise path which any individual may walk an exact route to higher states of spiritual awareness. The goal of auditing is to restore beingness and ability. This is accomplished by helping the individuals rid themselves of any spiritual disabilities and increasing individual abilities. Obviously, both are necessary for an individual to achieve his full spiritual potential. Auditing can be administered to a group such as Scientology, Sunday service, by a person of his own, using certain scientific Scientology books and materials, and one-to-one. Though auditing one is able to look at his own existence and improve his ability to confront what he is and where he is, vast differences exist between the technology of auditing, a religious practice, and other practices. Auditing does not use hypnosis, trance techniques, or drugs. The person being audited is completely aware of everything that's happening. Auditing is precise, though codified in his exact procedures. This is what L. Ron Hubbard says about auditing. When the Nation of Islam does its form of auditing, they are in control of what is going on with the process. So you're not going external to the Church of Scientology. You are trusting in your own brothers and sisters, your wives and your cousins and your family members and your community within that body to monitor and practice to see if there's an outcome. What the outcome ultimately will be, we shall see. We shall see. But this is auditing. Now it says why auditing works. I'm not going to read through why auditing works, but you could look up the subject why auditing works from the website. I may agree or disagree with some of the concepts, but the fact of the matter is this is what's written, so you should investigate it. Now, what is L. Ron Hubbard? And this is the crux of the controversy, right? What does he say this technology, where does this technology come from? Is it all based on one man's work? talking about L. Ron Hubbard or anyone else they contributed as an author. Although Dianetics and Scientology was founded by L. Ron Hubbard and all the scriptures are solely comprised of his writings and recorded lectures, he nonetheless wrote. Now listen to this. Acknowledgement is made to 50,000 years of thinking men, without whose speculations and observations the creation and construction of Dianetics would not have been possible. Credit in particular is due to Anaxagoras, Thomas Paine, Aristotle, Thomas Jefferson, Socrates, Rene Descartes, Plato, James Clerk Maxwell, Euclid, Charlotte, Lucretius, Herbert Spencer, Roger Bacon, William James, Francis Bacon, Sigmund Freud, Isaac Newton, Van Leeuwenhoek, Commander Thompson, MCUSN, Voltaire, William A. White, Will Durant, Count Alfred Karasabiki, and my instructions in atomic and molecular phenomena, mathematics and humanities at George Washington University and at Princeton. Well, seems that he goes back to possibly 2,500 years or maybe 2,000 years, but 2,500 years of thinking man's. He doesn't go back to 50,000 years of thinking man's. Does L. Ron Hubbard know African culture, Nile Valley culture? He may know a little bit as it was acculturated into the European, but he does not know, right? It is our job to reveal what was there before this 2,500 years of Plato, Herodotus, and all these other Greeks, and before them the Persians. So let's begin some of this work because this is not a crime. This is just where his state of. This is where L. Ron Hubbard's state and his adherents' state is. It's not our people's work. Our people's history goes far back. So I'm just going to bring it back another 2,500 years. The system of auditing was first written about in Kemet, which is called ancient Egypt, by the Greeks. The system evolved from classifying someone as a rek, male, or reketi, female. This was a proper title given to one who was knowledgeable by the king's court, by the Nosud Bidi, the king, the so-called pharaoh in the Pera, right, the great house. This title was alongside the priest, Hemnecher. The two had different functions, but the reket could be an attribute of the Hemnecher. The reket is, and the reketi is the knower. The title could be found at least written on stelae or on clothing materials such as belts, beginning at least with the 3rd dynasty as far as being written. There is no indication that the term reket was achieved by auditing, but an attribute that was proven in some matter. So I cannot say that the final result of being a reket was actually done by the so-called auditing that was talked about, but it does come about with a manner of mastering yourself. So, however, many were endowed by this term. The term reket was an attribute that the Kemetui wished to duplicate. The Kemetui is those of Kemet. To the end, they created a number of training programs: medicine, architecture, craftsmen, scribes, counter scientists, priesthood. These schools were in the Sabbats, which were the nomes, the towns, and in the palace called the Hinu, the interior, the palace. The schools were known as the Per-Ankh, and the system was the Wat-in-Ankh. That is the system of the Nile Valley knowledgeable ones. It's called the Wat-in-Ankh, and that system is in the Per-Ankh, the house of life, and the Wat-in-Ankh. Wat is path, the path of life. Question to our people. If even the devil has something to offer that would save your people's lives, would you at least hear it? What about the devil within us? Do we not listen to our own devils? Is not the devils winning the war against our people through technology, media, and our own reaction to our desperation? Is the devil winning the war? What if the devil is using a technology from our very own people? Would you not like to reclaim it and use it to balance the scales? Or will you be frightened because someone that you're calling a devil has it, even if it was yours, and you would not even look? Right? If you want to keep somebody ignorant, right, put it in a book, they say, but even put it on the temple walls, right, and call it by another name, and you are running hide and discard it, right? We have to fix the way that we think. We are too reactive. We are not observant. So I'm going to talk about a system. Now, the first recorded auditing session was with Imhotep, the chief lector priest, and Reket, or Rek, and was with his king, Necherket. Divine body is Necherket. Zoser, that's who you call Zoser. His name was Divine Body. The occurrence was a 7-year famine that the king would lose his kingdom, and if he did not come up with an answer for it, for the reasons why and what he should do about it. The conversation is memorialized in what is called the famine stela that sits on the island of Yebu, called Elephantine Island. I'm going to give you parts of this because it was Imhotep that created a system of that we might say auditing. The king says, "It was in mourning on my throne. Those of the palace were in grief because Happy had failed to come in time in a period of 7 years. Grain was scant, kernels were dried up, even man robbed his twin, children cried, the hearts of the old were needy, temples were shut, shrines covered with dust, everyone was in distress. I consulted with one of the staff of the Ibis, the chief lector priest of Imhotep, son of Ptah, south of the wall. He departed, he returned to me quickly. He let me know the flow of Happy." Now, Happy is the Nile River. There was a famine. The river was not flowing. It created a famine. The people were in distress. Now, Imhotep, it was a physician, an engineer. He created something called the sleep temples or dream temples, right? And so, so the sleep state is the first time such a thing is mentioned, and Imhotep is credited for what is known as the sleep schools, states that were created by putting the subject in a dream state, a contemplation state. Now, this is called Zoser's Sacrifice and Dream. I heard this and my heart was sad, and after I heard the message, I spread my clothes, a purification was done, a secret procession and offering was presented of bread, beer, geese, cattle, and all the good things for the goddesses at Elephantine, which was mentioned. When I was asleep, my heart was in life and happiness. I found the God standing. I caused him pleasure by worshiping and adoring him. He made himself known to me and said, I am Khnum, your creator. My arms are around you to steady your body, to safeguard your limbs. I bestow on your oars with precious stones since antiquity. So I could continue, but the most important thing is that the king was positioned to be in a state where he could address his fears. And in Imhotep's system, basically the success would be that that you would be visited by a Neter, a god, and and the solution would be in the form of them. I am only showing you the ancient procedure or the ancient thinking of it. I'm not validating as if it was true or not. I'm simply not doing that. I'm saying that the king was put in a state. A purification was done, a secret procession, and an offering was presented. And so the king was put in a state where he was able to address his fears, and he came out with a solution. Now, the systems of perception and mental clarity evolved into a process. The Kimtiyu, by the 12th dynasty, memorialized the attributes into myth, stories, and didactic literature that was popular throughout the kingdom and their various festivals in the schools. So they created literature that contained the states in which a person who was Makkaru or clear, if you want to use that terminology, or in the state of Islam, if you want to use that terminology, they created a system of literature. So I'm going to read some of the, just part of the literature. Do not be proud on account of your knowledge, but discuss with the ignorant as with the wise. The limits of art cannot be delivered. There's no artist whose talent is fulfilled. Fine words are more sought after than greenstone, but can be found with the women at the grindstone. That is what I had read in the beginning. If you meet an opponent in his moment, a director of heart who is superior to you, bend your arms and bow. Do not take up your heart against him, for he will not be swayed for you. You will be little bad speaking, but not clashing with him in his moment. It will mean he is called a fool when your self-restraint has subdued his excess. They're giving you instructions on not being reactive, understanding that if an aggressor is coming to you, that you can be little bad speaking by not clashing with him in his moment. It will mean he is called a fool. You don't have to respond to everything. This is how the ancient people of Kemet put it. If you meet an opponent in his moment, you're equal, a man from your levels. Silence is how you establish your superiority over him. While he is in his bad mouthing, greatly to the disgust of his successors, and your name is a good one in the mind of the officials. Be silent. You don't have to respond. You don't have to give in to your reactive mind. You don't have to address someone who is acting accordingly. You establish your superior over him by exhibiting your control over your reactive mind. If you meet an opponent in his moment who is a poor man and not your equal, do not vent your heart on him by his wretchedness. Put him on land for him to oppose himself. Do not pour out your heart at the man facing you. The demolition of a wretched heart is a difficult matter. What you wish will be done. Beat him with the hostility of the officials. It is instructions on how to deal with someone who is poor and wretched, right? And to understand what his condition is, and do you understand that his emotions are at its highest point for his survival? So you have to be careful about how you further weaken his heart. Now, there are hundreds of texts in the whole, and will be part of, you can find them in sources such as the Husia by Dr. Malana Karenga, Dr. Jacob Carruthers, and Miriam Litchum's Ancient Egyptian Literature, and countless other publications. They can also be found in ostraca, papyrus, and other stelae. These texts were memorized and told countless ways, and will be a form of self-auditing that the citizens of Kemet would weigh and model themselves on. So there are thousands of, hundreds and thousands of these instructions to kind of help you weigh what your level is and give you instructions. Becoming a netter, godlike, series of instructions and perceptions. So this is a very, 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 very rare scene that is found on the walls of a temple that's the majority of the time is closed off, and I'll show you why. It is a system. It is called the Assyrian. It is a temple of the mystery system where men and women are in fact trained. And so here you see the master or the instructor kneeling, and there is a term that is also given, that a measure of hin is given, which is that they are given instructions. So they are on their knees with instructions, and you see the initiates, male and female, going through several poses. Some rising from the dead, or being risen, as they say. Some being purified. Some accessed. Some in poses of mourning and deep ritual and contemplation, and others in listening and obedience stages. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. And so here are more of the stages. And so that we know that from the temple walls, there was a system in the per Ankh for those living the Wat in Ankh, that they went through several different states of initiation to, let's say, destroy the reactive mind and become like a netter. So here is the Assyrian at Abydos or Abju, and this whole chamber would have been covered, and the initiation chambers are underground, and all this was kind of uncovered. There was a kind of a mound on top of it, like a mound type of pyramid, but not a pyramid, like a mound, like let's say a Native American type of mound on top of this structure of dirt. And this was the initiation chamber. And then even in ancient times, there were issues where there were areas where they met the actual water level. And so this is a deep, dark initiation, let's say heaven and hell, let's say multiple levels, let's say terror and restraint. And let's say all these things are happening inside this initiation chamber. Modern Masonry has summarized these attributes, and they are in the System of Mysteries of Modern Masonry and Other Secret Societies. Dr. George G. M. James cited that these commandments or attributes existed in modern Masonry in his famous work, The Stolen Legacy. He quoted C.H. Vail in Ancient Mysteries in Modern Masonry. Dr. Joseph Ben Jochanan challenged his students to find these on the temple walls. Here is my work on that commandment of Dr. Joseph Ben Jochanan. On the left side is the ideas saying that it's the core of the mystery system in modern Masonry by C.H. Vail. Control of thought, control of action, steadfastness of purpose, identity with high ideas, evidence of a mission, call to a spiritual order, freedom from resentment, faith in the master, faith in one's learning abilities, preparedness for initiation. It is with these the mastery of these 10 concepts that you can be, you could release your fetters, you could become godlike. For the ancient Egyptians, the Kemetui, they fashion that your heart, which would be weighed down by misjudgment or not being able to understand your emotions and your commandments, would make your heart heavier than the feather of truth, and that you would suffer a peril. You would not make it to become an ak, a star, an asar, and you would be weighed down. On the right side is the actual components of the ancient system of the Kemetiu, and control of thought is identified with Sia. Control of action is identified with Heka. Steadfastness of purpose is identified with Hu, authoritative utterance, dictum, and command. Your speech must be purposeful. That is how we know that you are purposeful, through your speech, how you put out your ideas. Identity with higher ideas relates to Ma'at, truth, justice, righteousness, right action, understanding how, using Siahu and Heka, how to do right action. Mat is basically a flat surface, right? A right surface. Evidence of mission is the next one. Geru, the Geru Ma, the silent man, is the Geru Ma, the silent man. Call to a spiritual order, meaning that to become an Ak, to become a spirit, beneficial, to be useful, to be profitable, but not just to be spirit and spirit's sake, but to be useful. Freedom from resentment is to be Mat Keru, triumphant, acquitted, blameless. Faith in the master, Sejam, your ability to hear your master, hear divine thoughts, and to internalize it. Faith in one's own learning abilities is Ma, to see, to perceive, to regard, to inspect, to understand, to have faith in one's own learning abilities is connected to Ma. Preparedness for initiation is all that we do in life, is to become, we know that there will be an end for us, to be an Osir, to be initiated, to go from one door to the next door, to be an Asir. And so these 10 things mastered on the left side is what the Europeans know, and those things on the right comes at least 2,500 to 3,000 years earlier in the books of the beginning, actually with the Hotep di Nosut and the steles and the other materials leading up to the pyramid texts and the coffin texts and the Paradim Aru and the Amduit and the Book of Two Ways and the Celestial Cow, the Book of Gates. All of these concepts are embedded and on different levels. So let's just see. Now, interesting, we see the same ideas, control of thought, control of action, steadfast of purpose, identity with high ideas, where we know has an ancient African origin of Sia, Hu, and Heka, and Ma'at. We see them in the Buddhist Noble Eightfold Path. So when you start thinking of thinking men, right, you see the Eightfold Path, which is right understanding, right thought, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, right livelihood, right, on kind of a spoke or wheel that keeps constantly turning 360 degrees, right? You see that when the Noble Eight Path is put into this, you get a concept of 360 degrees, but it all stems from something that is 3,000 years earlier, which is Sia, Heka, Hu, Ma'at, Geru, Ak, Ma'akaru, Seja, Ma, Usir. Now, so in the Kemetic, the path of using, displaying the commandments of virtues attained in what is called the Wa Enoch, the path of life. So you can find teachings of the Wa Enoch in the Amenop, and you can see that it's virtually identical with the Bible, Proverbs 22, if you match up them. What is important to this discussion is that the Wa Enoch is a Kemet path away from the reactive mind. In Buddhism, the same commandment version is matches up side by side. So that is their way of getting through the reactive mind. You see the Masonic 10 virtues. That is their way of moving from the reactive mind. By understanding a process where we might call auditing, meaning going through these different commandments and mastering them, you become clear and clear in Dianetics, in that concept. From Kemet, you get Ma'akaru. From the Dharma Mill, you get Nirvana, and from the Masonic order, you get degrees. So that you can see that these concepts of thinking men have its origin in this structure here. So in the Kemetic process, to become clear, these are concepts you will find out if you are clear as you meet in the Kemetui sense, Usir, on your judgment day, where your heart has to be lighter than the feather of Ma'at. So in this concept here, this particular stele here in the Book of Gates, you will see, or it could be the Book of Gates or the Amduit. You could see the initiates meeting the Grand Master. He has the Ankh, and he has the Crook, and he has his regalia. And this is 4,000 years, 4,500 years in the sense of construction of this concept of becoming clear. Dr. Yosef Ben Jochanan also noted, as he brought many of us to Kemet, to look for the following sign that would appear on every top of every temple, tomb, that you would begin to see this particular symbol, which is the winged Ra, the winged Ra. And the winged Ra is called the Bayadet, the Bayadet. And it symbolizes the victory of Horus over Seth. Seth is supposed to be the evil component of, or the evil brother, or the evil self. And in books such as the Continuings of Horus and Seth, and you can see it also in the Temple Walls of Edfu. You can see the myth of how Heru mastered himself. It was only when Horus mastered himself that he become Horus Heru Bayadet. And this state came from the contemplations and advice from the many characters that represent self-mastery in ancient Kemet, including Jehudi, Set, Shu, and others that he encountered as he was in this battle with Set, where in most situations he had lost because he was in his reactions, he was in his fear, he was in his despair, he was fighting for his father's kingdom against the man who had killed his father, which was his uncle. But he had been losing until he became Horus Bayadet. And when he had mastered himself, he had became ruler. And so this is a symbol of self-mastery. In the book of Gates, Gates is Arid, and the Amduit, the hidden chamber. It's not important for me to discuss and show metal nature, but just to give you some small points as to where the system of thinking men came from. So on this sacred barge with Awef, Awef is Ra, the sun nature or the sun principle, but he is in a form of a corpse, and he is surrounded by his protectors. His protectors are Sia, Hu, and Heka, right? Control of thought, control of purpose, control of action. And that you can see some of the meta nature on top of the first boatman. You see Sia, and then there's the Awef, and then there is Hu, and then invisible is Heka, and you see the meta nature for Heka. And they are being told by other followers in the underworld, right, as they are in the darkness attempting to be born within the light, after they won on one system, passed through the many Arids, the gates, and in another system passed through the hours, to be born again in the morning, where Ra is leaves the vagina, is born from the vagina of Nut. How does this all, all of this relates? I'm just showing you the 4,000 to 5,000 years of thinking men, where these concepts come from. The end result is in these scenarios. The actual process of doing this comes from these systems, practices and so you see the end result is here. This is important because mostly in biblical and Islamic and Hebrew sources, you don't see women. In the Nile Valley, the system is for men and for women. And so here you see a sister. Her name is Ameneni. She is a Simeot. She's a chief priestess. And she is on the left side. She has something in her hands, 2 eyes in her mouth, in her hands. And then on the far left side, you see a sect at her back. On the far right side, you see a seer. Now, this is an important conversation where you see Inpu. Inpu is doing the weighing, and up on top of Inpu is Tahuti in the form of a baboon doing the recording. Now, there's a conversation going on with Inpu, or Anubis, as he is talking to a seer about this woman. And so I'm going to read some of the meta nature. So on top of the right scale, where Ma is, there is some medu nature, and it says Hail, Inpu, that's the speaking one, who is the wearer, the Eri of the scales in this house, and he says that her heart is really right, really righteous. And you see the feather and on the bottom if you look close, right? But her heart is really, really right. And he is saying this to Usir. He's reporting to Usir, and Usir is saying, speaks Usir. This is on top of what looks like the foreleg of a ox or a cow, in the first column with the snake, and it says he speaks Usir, who is Kente Ameta, who is the chief of the West. And then in the second column is a rabbit, which is like wind. When he exists, he is Nefer. He is you see the crook. He's a ruler, right, or a steward. And underneath that you say life. So he's good. He's a ruler of life. And then you see him talking in the third column about the righteousness, and then it says her eyes together with her mouth it seems not to testify against her. Her heart is really right, and you see the feather of Ma'at, and you see on the bottom. So her heart is really right. So Osor is saying that, and so in her hands, you see her eyes and her mouth. So we know that we are talking about the same thing, and that her eyes and her mouth, what she sees and what she speaks, right, did not testify against her, right? And it seems that she has this as a reward, and you see Tahuti recording this, that talking about, he's writing a recording that's talking about Osir Nebid, that she is an Asir. She has passed the test. She is righteous in the afterlife. She's Makaru. She's become a netter, and then it's her name. Then it's a title Simiet in the first column, and then it's her name Amun Ra, and then she is and then it says a royal netter, and then it's her name. Amon Nani is her name, and then it basically says that she is let me just see on the right side. I would have to look it up, but the more important part of it is that she is righteous. Okay, it's a name, Amon Nani. That she is really righteous, and so you have a recording between Impu Usir, a conversation between Impu Usir and Tahuti about this woman who is righteous. And so in the other systems, you don't see women in the afterlife. Now this leg of lamb, these are all signs and symbols of primordial African people. This leg of lamb, or this leg or foreleg of a cow, not a cow, but usually of a bull, of a male bull, is basically the Big Dipper. So I can show you but we're not really talking about all that. So I just was going on a tangent. The most important thing about this is that her heart on the left side of the scale is lighter than the feather, right, on the right side, and that she passes this test, and that this scene talks about this woman who is a semiat, a chief priestess, a singer, that she is she's getting all the accords that a man would be, because she's the master of a system. I could have shown N.O.I in the Book of the Dead, or I could have shown Nefer. I could have shown any of the men, but this is important because this system is for thinking men and thinking women. And here she is at the end of this process, where she has to recite her, what they call the 42. And so up on the top is basically hail to the people, the demons of the chambers, acknowledging them by name, because you would have to know your enemies by name. Your enemies of yourself, you would have to know them by name. And so you will mention them. And then on the bottom, you will say what you have not done wrong in this place. And so you have the 42, and then on the right side has her kind of final commandments. And so here again you're seeing that Usir is speaking praise to her, to Amenani, the Mut, the great mother, and she is a royal mistress, Semiet, and that she is basically, it says something about Amun-Ra, the great Netcher, and then it has her seated and her name, so she's giving a title, and then she is Mak-Keru, true of voice. She is clear. She is clear on the states of life and the states of death, and that the right side of the papyrus would see, is basically saying this is her parrot. This is her parrot Heru. This is a parrot Heru. This is this is her final funerary offering, and then it gives her name. So this is very rare to see it actually initialized. This is how powerful this woman was. That you will see that at the end of it, it is if you've never seen Per Heru, this is what it's basically saying. It's saying Ta Per Heru, and then it's mentioning her name, and that she is Mak-Keru. This is showing again clarity on different levels. Now, look, I could have named more than I know, but all the esoterical science, the chemist system, Druidism, the Ethiopian schools, the Essenes, the Nabateans and the Petras, the Hebrews and the Canaanites, the Persians, the Indian schools, Buddhism and Hindu, the Greeks, the Romans. Sorry about misspelling the Catholic, but who cares? And their secret societies, the Gnosis, the Islamic schools, the Wicca, the Templar rites of Mizran, the Hermetic schools, the Masonry schools, Napoleon, the Rosicrucians, the Prince Hall, modern metaphysical schools, the OTO with Crawley, the Boule, Scientology, the modern Hebrew movement, the Moorish science, Kemetic craft, the N.O.I teaching. All these, I can mention more details. It's not, the point of it is that all these schools, they have systems of self-mastery, or supposed to have systems of self-mastery and methods to get there. I have shown the end results of some of these systems through the Kemetic, system, and what the Kemetic system looks like, right? And what the Kemetic system, the center of Kemetic system, as it is aligned to at least some of the ones that we know, like Masonry and Buddhism, and then obviously connected to the Rosicrucian and others. You see all these signs and symbols of the African man or the black man. You see them in these secret sciences. So the fact of the matter is, we don't know. Many of the people who seem to act like they know, they don't know. They don't know how to look for African primacy or black primacy. What they ultimately do is deify the Europeans and not attempt to build ourselves, and not seem to, or to discard tools that are actually ours. Lots of reasons: lazy scholarship, the need to be accepted by Europeans, the need to blame Europeans instead of writing ourselves, trying new things. Simply, they do not know. Some of them are agents, agents of cultivation, or just agents. And then still many of African people still teach within the European paradigm, but teach good stuff, good material, but teach it within the European paradigm is because they just don't know. Some of the people say that the Medu Neter or the hieroglyphics can never be deciphered or has never been deciphered. They do it for their own convenience, whether or not to even know what the Europeans know. So let's just say you say it's never been deciphered, but isn't it interesting to know what the Europeans say or see what their formula is, and or ultimately see why they are so far ahead while they're using a system that's yours, right? But you say on the right side can't be deciphered, but on the left side, either by direct translation or by acculturation or by trade or by relationships, they know what these things are. But you say on the right side, even though they tell you what it is, you're going to reject it because you say the Medu Neter is not deciphered. So I'm on my way to close, but these are the reasons why. This is the N.O.I in the Medu Neter. You can find it in instructions of N.O.I. You can find the you can see the path. So some of this you can make it out, the and you see the Ankh. And then you see kind of like the papyrus roll. This is a book, instructions, the N.O.I. These are some of the instructions from N.O.I. In the left side, the Medu Neter, those people who can understand part of the Medu Neter can verify the beginning of the instructions for the living. And for those who see the Medu Neter, you see the concept of a Ha, the lion in the paw, Ha, M-S, Seba, right? So that is the foremost of instructions. And then you see the concept of the instructions for the living. You see Ankh and then rule book, and then the teachings for prospering, all the principles of going into the magnets and customs of the courtiers in order to know how to refute a complaint to the one who speaks it, and to turn back an accusation upon the one who sends it, to set him straight upon the path of life, and to cause him to prosper upon the earth, to cause his heart to descend to its shrine, steering him away from evil. Isn't this what auditing is supposed to help you do? Or any of these systems? So why should we not know what the systems are? So this is in the structures of N.O.I. That it corresponds to Proverbs 22 that's in the Bible. Teachings of Amenat, the beginning of the instructions of the way of life. And so it repeats itself on the right hand, because now you read from right to left. You see that same Ha, M, Seba. And then the instructions, beginning of the instructions, the verses of the way of life, made by the scribe Amenat for his apprentice Harmon. He says, you are a man who listens, Sejam, to a speech to separate good from bad. Attend and hear my speech, Sejam. Do not neglect what I say, because he's the master, right? Very sweet it is for a man to be recognized as someone competent in every work. Let your heart become like a great dike, dam, besides what the flood is mighty. Receive my utterance, right, in all its matter. Do not be recalcitrant so as to overthrow it. Let your eyes see every trade. Be clear. Be clear. Right? That's what it's saying. And all that is done by writing, and you will realize the fact, and they are excellent. The observations I have spoken, do not neglect the matter. I shall reject a long report as inappropriate. Make great your heart, be patient in his haste, and speak only when you have summoned. You shall be a scribe and go around the house of life. This is how to become like a chest of writings. He is talking about what happens if you do this. You will be clear. You will be Makeru. You will be a Geroma. In all the different systems. But this is the earliest system. If you do these instructions, if you master yourself. Those who are attacking the Nation of Islam for using a tool does not know the black man, or refuse to know the black man, because for them none of these things exist, but that European has translated them and is using them as a tool. But we can't use our own tools and technologies as a tool. And even if we start at one place, we could use the teachings of students of other teachings to understand that we are right. And that's why I'm doing this, is to let the people know. I'm not doing this for the Nation of Islam per se. I'm doing it for the people, to let the people know that the science of thinking men is black, is our people's, and has been enculturated into these other systems. Here is what you call the Ren mathematical papyrus. The reason why I'm showing you is here is what they call the Tep Hesep, and I'm going to explain what the Tep Hesep is. The Tep Hesep is a process of thinking that the ancient people of Kemet used. So I'm summarizing this, what I've all said, into this process of the Tep Hesep. And the phrase is translated, this is from Theophilo Benga's African Philosophy. The phrase is translated as Tep Hesep, method correct. The correct method, let me just see it where it's not in French, basically is the correct method of investigation of nature and understanding the mysteries. And so this is found in what they call the Ren mathematical papyrus, which is really the Ames papyrus. The Ames is the ancient African name. Ren is the European name, because they like to rewrite everything. And so we don't know unless we investigate where these things come from. But this is the great mathematical papyrus, the Ames papyrus. And it says it is the right method of investigating nature to know all that exists, all mysteries and all things secret. For the purpose, this papyrus roll was copied by Ames, and it was copied from an ancient text. And we know this from the translation of the transposing of the hieratic into the Meta Neter, and then the translations, and the translation says the right method of investigating nature to know that all exists, all mysteries and all things secret. For the purpose, this papyrus roll was copied by Ames, and this was copied from even a more ancient text. So here the African is doing what L. Ron Hubbard was doing. L. Ron Hubbard said that he came from thinking men, and he went back 2,500 years and he named them. I am going back altogether another 2,500 years, right? But in this Ames papyrus, which is somewhere, they say that it was copied even from a even more ancient text. And so this is this concept of the thinking men and the origin of thoughts. Now, the Tep Hesep, where else is it seen? Now, when I normally don't do this, but I will do this. When Napoleon came to Egypt, he was there was the French order that he was a part of, and I could talk about this later in another program, and I have. And he was competing against the British system, and I don't need to talk about what the systems are. Those of you who are Masons, you know the French system and the other system, right? So, and you know the concepts of the Rosicrucian and Scottish rites, and we don't want to go into all of that because it's unnecessary for me. The only more important thing is that they went to find some proof that this stuff was not mythology. So here they find Urchison, the Stella of Urchison, who is a Grand Master. And he says that he's a Grand Master. And he says in the Meta Neter, And here's the meta-netia, the transliterations, and here's the translation. I indeed am a artist, a craftsman, wise in his craft, a man standing above all men by his learning. Right? So you see at the end, you see, for those who know the meta-netia, you see Raket in F for his learning, his knowledge. Right? And then he says that I know what is in the deep waters, the weighing done by the reckoning of accounts, how to produce the correct method, the tepeseb, the form of issuing forth and coming in so that a member may go to his place in the afterlife. Right? So he is saying that he's a grand master. At some point, maybe at another point, I will unpack the whole Stella of Itcherson, but you can look it up. This is why I'm doing this. I'm not beholding you to me, right? That's not important. I'm not even beholding you to Dr. Ben. I'm not doing that. I am telling you what Europeans already know, what thinking men already know, so you can impact it yourself. But the fact of the matter is, how do you become wise craftsmen, standing above all by your learning, if not by a process that you may call auditing with a person or another part of the system. Now, the papyrus precedes papyrus. I want to read you again, beginning a collection of fine words. You see that title that we have showed with the hot M, right? That formula, said by a man of the elite, foremost of arm, God's father and beloved of God, eldest son of the king of his body, overseer of the city advisor, Ptahhotep, in teaching the ignorant to be wise, according to the rules of fine words, something useful whoever heeds and something harmful to whoever transgresses it. Now, so let me just go through. I want to talk about here Dr. Mario Beatty, and he is one of our best, youngest scholars trained by Dr. Theophilo Banga. And he, for whatever purposes, because we have interest, he dabbled into unpacking the meaning of the mysteries or the secrets, the Sesta. And I want to read some of what he transcribed, right, as the Africans to be, or the Ramesh, the humans, those attended to be knowers. I am the knower of things, a follower of Tahuti, and a closed-mouthed on the secrets of the temple. This is what this says. I was initiated into divine book and have seen the power of Tahuti, and I am supplied with it. Their secrets. I have revealed all their secrets, so that one inquires from me in all their affairs. Master of secrets of every work with his majesty desired to be done. One who finds the way in every complexity of the interior of the royal residence. The royal residence is the house, the per ankh. So one who finds the way in every complexity of the interior, Sesta, of the mysteries of the royal house. What is the royal house? What makes up the royal residencies, the royal house? These are what thinking men who are black have done. You don't get to understand these without going through systems of initiations, systems of knowledge, and activities to make sure you don't forget. Activities to show that you are courageous, that you could wield knowledge, right? And you could wield teachings. You could stand on your own. How do you face your fears? How do you become clear? Auditing is one process to become clear, but it is a valid process in the terms of one system there are other systems. Many of these systems have been long kind of forgotten. We don't see it in actual practice, so that we have to recreate and reconstruct it, and that becomes a problem when we reconstruct systems without a guide, because one person will wield it one way and another person will wield it another way, and then there will be, as you know, there would be problems as to what the actual practice. So in ancient Kemet, we actually have a record of thinking men, what they thought, what they practiced, how they looked at the mysteries of the mind, right? How they saw themselves moving to the afterlife. How will they present themselves in the afterlife? They are presenting themselves in the afterlife as being clear, as being Mat Keru, in a state of maybe in another practice, nirvana. They are fighting through their fears, fighting through their reactive mind. Everything in our culture, they follow a path, set practices, right? They say what their teachings are, to set them straight upon the path of life. This is what our, these are the elements of our thinking men. So family, I would like to conclude this presentation with the following statement. And I'm going to try to make it plain. I was not here to unpack the teachings, rituals, signs, and symbols of the race for the control of the African mind or the black mind. That's not what I was trying to do in this video. The corrupted signs, symbols, rituals, rites, actions, life, religion of the original black man is something that we must continuously study and unpack step by step, using all the resources and using all the tools, and so it's something that can't be done in a short period of time, certainly if we're trying to find some usefulness of it. However, everyone who teaches pulls from the knowledge centers of the past, whether they know it or they don't. Those criticizing the Nation of Islam, many of them are members of one or more crafts, students of masters who studied crafts, or who've studied other, whose basis of knowledge come from other sources that pull from a variety of sources. So it's very interesting to me how the attack could come from sources that are unseen or that they do not cite. Others who are not part of any of these affiliations that I might have mentioned, interesting, have libraries that come from the teachings from some of the individuals of these institutions that I mentioned, whether they know it or not. And it becomes disingenuous when you begin to pull out sources to refute something and you don't say where that is. Because once you tell us where the tax centers come from, then we can look it up. And when you don't do that, that is just sheer dishonest scholarship, bordering on plagiarism if it's not plagiarism itself. The attack on the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan on the subject is dishonest from all those who have attacked him and the Nation of Islam. Should the black man be ignorant of the systems that are winning the minds and bodies of our people without a defense? The Nation of Islam voluntarily let you know what they have been doing inside their house, at least some of the information, and that is transparency for our people, and that's important. Again, many of those critics actually know the places in where they pull the information to make sense, and those people who are criticizing them, again, are members of other societies, but they are not disavowing their oaths. They're not disavowing their systems. They're not being transparent at all about their systems. We know where the original video came from. We know roughly when it was shot. We know by research the people who were initially involved in it. And the original video should have been more of a question to the Nation of Islam rather than an out attack, because it didn't seem that none of the people originally involved in the making of the criticism were members of the Nation of Islam. They were looking on the outside and really looking at Scientology and not looking at the practices of the Nation of Islam. So it should have been a polite question from one brother to another brother if it was sincere. For if we ask you your affiliations, since you have not said yet who your affiliations would be, right, you would maybe not be honest about it and where you get your some of the tools that you use in your thinking. And I'm pretty sure many of the tools that you use for your thinking does not come directly from the original black man. I would say to our audience, to the people, when the attacks come against our people, always ask the attackers about their knowledge base. Ask them, what book are they citing? What library are they citing? What affiliation? Don't let them attack our people without being transparent themselves. See, they can't have their cake or eat their cake, have their cake and eat it too. They can't have it both ways. They have to be transparent. You can't attack and not reveal. You can't take and can't give. It's a situation of actually of the reactive mind, and that's one of the things that any enlightened group of people or teachers who want to enlighten their people want to relieve the people of these particular, if you want to say, reptilian responses and actions, and get into a thinking person. The other part of it is that you know, people seem to want to attack what the Nation of Islam is doing, but they're outside of that family. You don't want people coming into your family, your apartment, or your house and telling you what to do with your family. If they have a family, it is their choice. Let me just tell you what really happens. If you go to any of these people's pages that make these attacks and you say something disagreeable, you will get thrown out. You will get blocked. But at the same time, right, you want the Nation of Islam to be transparent, and they are transparent, but they're not throwing you out. That's the difference. They have invited millions of us to their activities. it'd be interesting if we track the records of the people who are attacking, if they are in fact ever a member of a black organization. Have they taken orders from other black men? Who were their teachers? What is the history of their work? It's always interesting to ask those questions. I'm saying to the audience, I've heard some of the attacks about the financial relationships and connections with the Church of Scientology. If there's a relationship at all, if you know the history of the Nation of Islam, you will know that it's temporary to the benefit of the Nation of Islam. You can't have your cake and eat it too. What is your relationship with, for example, YouTube? Or anyone else that may pay you, I'm just being polite, but pay you to do a lecture or a seminar? How transparent are you with your affiliations? Some of us, or some of you, have a long time interesting relationship with YouTube. And YouTube has not been to the benefit, really, of our people. It has been much of a destructive force. We have people who are keyboard assassins, keyboard attackers. The history of them helping our community is minimum, if it exists at all. What the Nation of Islam does is their business. If they're successful, I'm pretty sure it will benefit our people, because they have been one of the longest standing organizations of our community, and they have cleaned up the black man and black woman of America under various leaderships. They have done this, right? But for you to go into someone else's family, you don't feed them, you don't support them, you don't raise them up, you don't take them out of drugs. It doesn't, and what you do does not extend to the wider community. So let's just put the burden on the attackers. I'm not going to mention them by name because it's not really relevant for me, or that's not my purpose. My purpose is I'm talking to your inner self. What have you done in your young lives for the black man and black woman of America? Who have you raised up and inspired? You can list them, right? Don't use El-Hajj Malik El-Shabazz. I am 54 years old. I was born 1 month after El-Hajj Malik El-Shabazz, the man we know as Malcolm X, was assassinated. I'm 54. Don't bring up your teachers because before you were taught by that same teacher, others were taught by that same teacher. Others traveled to ancient Kemet, ancient Egypt, or Egypt currently, way before you got the idea. I went to Kemet in 1987. You can count the years. I met Dr. Ben in 1983. You can count the years. I, among a few, were at the end of his life. Some of you weren't there. It doesn't mean that I don't respect what you may have learned from our teacher, and I am not pinpointing or talking about anybody particularly personally, right? Because I've learned to be patient. Actually, being patient and listening has made me a better teacher, using the tools that I've been taught. But at the same time, when you criticize someone else's house and you're not transparent, that's dishonest. That's dishonest. Because we all in the United States pay federal taxes, state taxes, mortgage taxes, land tax, water tax, utility tax, educational tax, college tuition. Some of us pay Masonic dues, church dues. Why do you want someone else being transparent, and they are transparent, and you are not? It's just a certain amount of hypocrisy that is going on. And so the most important thing about this whole thing is, if the reactive mind is the problem of our people, and if we can cure the reactive mind and getting into more of a thinking, more of a area of an action of knowledge, control of thought, control of action, being steadfast to purpose, having an identity with higher ideas, an evidence of the mission, a call to a spiritual order, free from resentment, faith in the teacher, facing your own learning abilities. If we can get into that mindset, whether you use the ancient Kemet words, we can use words all day. I could say Siahu Heka Ma, Geru Ma, I could say those words all the day. Ma Keru. I could say those words. Those are just words. What are you? The question is, what are you offering? What are you offering to cure the reactive mind? We're not concerned about the words of a particular system. That's a system. We're not. What we are concerned about is, what is your system to cure our people? Because the Nation of Islam is actually correct. It is the reactive mind that is killing us. Reactive mind is making us rationalize to sell drugs, rationalize to rob our people, rationalize to where this began to change our religion, rationalize to sell our brothers to another place. It was the reactive mind that allows us to look at things that we think is wealth, but it's not wealth, which is continuously going on in Africa. This is the reactive mind of wanting to be like the European and not be like yourselves, but the Europeans learn from you. It's the reactive mind. What are you offering? So going forward, let's have a discussion, you great attackers, right? Because you are attacking. That's what you're doing. You're not asking questions. You actually are attacking. What are you offering? That's what I want our community to demand from you, right? And I want you to be transparent. I want you to be transparent. If you are a Mason and a Moor, or a Mason and a Kemet, or a Mason and a Muslim, right? Or part of any other secret society, we want you to be transparent about it before you start attacking one of our shiniest organizations based on using a tool that they are still evaluating, but they're onto something because they can take this tool without taking the chip that comes with it, right? The only person who's putting the chip and attaching it is you, but they have not taken the chip. But you are assuming that they have taken the chip. So where does your esteemed teachings come from? Now, I know lots of Moors where we disagree a little bit, like Sharif Anil Bey. That's a good brother. I disagree just a little bit with the brother. But you can talk to Sharif Anil Bey. He's a very wise man. He will tell you where you can agree, where he agree and disagree, and he will be transparent. And he has been transparent about some of the other places where he has tapped for just to examine, just for a look-see, and then but continue. But Sharif Milbay is a more, right? No doubt about it. He may have looked in some places just to see what they knew, but he's a more. You can even talk to, for example, Dolo Lamore, right? You could talk to him. You can't tell him that his signs and symbols, you can't tell him that it doesn't work. He will tell you that that the monkey got it, but he uses it to control the monkey. You can't tell, but you can talk to him, right? You can actually talk to him. He would tell you his rules. He would just say, listen, that thing's sacred to me. Don't talk about Noble Drew Ali in a disrespectful way. That's his command. But you could talk to the brother. As long as you're not disrespecting, you could have questions, or you could disagree with the teachings. As I have questions and disagreed with some things, but never disrespect someone of our own. Why would I disrespect the Prophet Noble Drew Ali? Why would I disrespect the most honorable Elijah Muhammad? Why would I disrespect Mosiah Marcus Garvey? Why would I disrespect the most honorable, or the honorable, Minister Louis Farrakhan? Why would I disrespect any of his representatives? This is not what thinking men do. What thinking men do is ask questions, draw lines, unify where they can unify. Thinking black men do not just separate themselves. What I've tried to do in this video, and I'm going to close, is I've tried to show that L. Ron Hubbard mentioned where he got some of his information, and he mentioned 2,500 years. I've tried to take it back in recorded history another 2,500 years. There may be some others with some sources that I do not know that could take it back further than what I have taken it back, but Imhotep, the third dynasty in ancient Kemet with Neterket, is a record that we have. We know the process that he was taking, and then I've walked up as the system evolved into ancient Kemet. What I have not done is, because it's not really interested me at this particular time to do it, is to show you the European system, how they constructed themselves and ended up being inspired by the Arabs when they were coming out of the plague, or the Umayyads when they were coming out of the plague, and they got new technologies from another place, and how the Umayyads and others got information after they invaded ancient Kemet. The Arab invasion of Kemet. You can read Butler with the introduction to Dr. John Henry Clark for references on that, or you could listen to a lot of scholars out there, like Anka Keck from the Amin Ra Squad, that will talk about the House of Wisdom and how basically the Abbasids created what, instead of the Pra-Ankh, the House of Life, they created the House of Wisdom, and they used information that would have been called that are called pagan, but they reinforced their version of Islam, and then they spread it out to the world, or the before them the Persians, the Napataeans, right? The Greeks, the Romans and the Greeks, and the other groups of people, the Hittites, the other groups of people and before them even the people of Sumer, and then as they were attacked by the Akkadians. So there are a lot of places to look for these elements as they diffuse, but finding a working system has been probably the most difficult task without taking an oath, which is a chip, right? It is very, very difficult to find an actual living working system to test. So I'm going to close. This has been my presentation. It is the reactive mind that is something that the black man and black woman of America has to address. If you are attacking a system that's in place, offer your system or leave the room. Otherwise, you're not helping. Offer your system, offer your wisdom, offer your sources. Be transparent, right? Show us a working system, or show us who are the models that. Who are the models? Or you the model? For example, Brother Ishmael Bey. He's a good brother. I know Brother Ishmael Bey. I think he could raise some questions. He could do it a little bit differently than what he's been doing. And he has some wisdom. I'm just concerned and surprised that he would be one of the people, and I know that he has skills, and other people that know him know that he has a skill set, some training. We have to do better. We have to address the reactive mind. I hope that my information has been helpful. The last thing that I would like people to do is, if I've been helpful at all, is that I am going to put up the GoFundMe page of my professor, Dr. Leonard Jeffries, who is a friend of all of ours. And if the teachings that I have has largely come through, he has been my lifelong mentor, him and Professor James Small, and of course Dr. Joseph Benjo Cannon, the ancestor, and Dr. John Henry Clark, the ancestor, and Professor Edward Scobie. But right now, Dr. Leonard Jeffries is one of our eldest elders. If I have benefited you anyway, please go to his GoFundMe page, gofundme.com/Leonard Jeffries, and donate so he can help produce other shining young scholars. Peace. Hotep, Assalamu alaikum, Islam, Shalom, Amen.